Dave in New York.
Yes, hi.
Hi,
Dave.
We've talked to you before, right?
Good.
Yes, how are you? Thank you for taking my call.
I'm good. Welcome back.
Good. I have a quick question. I read the book, The Late Great Planet Earth, about 35 years ago.
Right.
It was published in 1970,
Yes.
and it became the best-selling book of the decade. Now, the purpose of the book, from what I understand, was to demonstrate that current-day events were predicted by the ancient Hebrew prophets from the Bible. Now, it describes that the generation that would see the rebirth of the nation of Israel in 1948 would see specific signs, including Russia, allied with Iran, in an adversarial relationship with Israel, a European Federation of Nations that would have, let's say this way, an economic crisis, and the nations of the world would be involved in a global unsolvable problem over the status of Jerusalem. Now, it's just a simple question. The question is, have you read the book? And if so, do you see any connection between what was written in the book, The Late Great Planet Earth in 1970, and the current world situation?
I read the book probably a bazillion years ago.
Oh, you have? I have never read the book, so I'm going to leave this one to you.
I read it as science fiction, or as a fictional, apocalyptic thing, and I was not really very impressed with it.
Okay. Now, I'm sorry, did you say fictional?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you sure we're talking about the same book? Because
yes.
It's basically a documentary book where it documents the rebirth of Israel.
No, it's not really a documentary.
Okay. Okay. Now, are you familiar with what the book says is going to happen?
It's been a long time, but
okay.
I just remember that the book was, like I said, I took it as fiction. I read it as fiction.
I honestly don't think we're talking about the same book.
So you're saying that the
Late Great Planet Earth. I know
the
exactly
book was written in
1970,
and you're saying it predicted things that had happened in the 40s.
Well, let's put it this way. The book, no, follow this. The book was written in 1970.
Right.
And it basically connected future events with, supposedly, it gave a list of supposedly things that the Bible says was going to happen. Okay.
Right.
Now, what it talked about, the fact, obviously was written in 1970. The rebirth of Israel was 1948. So it talked about the generation that would see the rebirth of Israel.
Right.
Obviously,
so in other words, he retrofitted stuff that he already knew had happened and matched it up to things that it said in the Bible so that it could sound like it was predicted.
Well, no. He was looking actually forward from 1970.
Okay.
And he just referenced the rebirth of Israel in 1948.
So what specific predictions with exact dates and places that weren't obvious was he able to make?
Very good question. Now, what's interesting, my brother and I lecture on the subject. Twice a year, 17 years in a row, we got invited to a local high school, and we were able to use the blackboard. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And we put a list of those predictions on the blackboard. Now,
what's the best one? Hit. Don't waste the time with. Just hit me with your favorite.
Yeah. Very, very simple. You'd have to see Iran publicly threatening to destroy Israel. You'd have to see Europe uniting into the United States of Europe.
Now wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
No, in 1970, Iran was already publicly threatening them all the time. I thought you said he was predicting future stuff.
Right. No, actually, the concept is very simple. It would be Russia allied with Iran in an adversarial relationship with Israel. When the book was written, the United States was allies with the Shah of Iran, and Russia and Iran weren't, happy to say, allies.
Okay.
So, the next thing they talked about, the fact, was that Europe would unite into the United States of Europe, politically, economically, and militarily. But then they'd head to a great economic crisis centered in Europe, which is, that's what I'm trying to point out.
This is all incredibly vague stuff. I mean, talking about one country will be allies with another country. I mean, I'd almost say that was 50-50.
Right.
Right. And then if you talk about at some indeterminate point in the future, I mean, like 200 years from now, if somebody allied with somebody else, you could say, oh, look, this book was written a long time ago. I mean, political alliances come and go constantly. People are declaring war and threatening each other constantly. What I was asking was, does he predict anything really, really specific?
Absolutely. Now, very simple.
Okay.
What he says is going to happen, okay?
When? What year?
Right around the corner. This is what I'm going to give you what he's going to talk about in the book, okay? And he relates it to the ancient Hebrew prophets. Pretty soon there's going to be a conflict
Pretty soon? Can you be more specific than that?
Relatively soon. No, it's not that
No!
But basically you're going to see a conflict between Iran and Israel, and Iran's going to make that very badly.
I would
look.
I'm saying that it's not really very impressive to predict in 1970 that Israel's going to be fighting with Iran.
Well, no, he refers to the prophet Ezekiel.
Every part of the Middle East was fighting with Israel since the 40s.
100%. But he refers to a prophecy in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38,
right,
where it talks about ancient Persia. So he's not making predictions. What he does is he connects the ancient Hebrew prophets to current day events. Now, the big thing is this that I want to point out to you, okay, is that the current situation in the Middle East, it says in the book there's going to be a global unsolvable problem where Jerusalem, the West Bank, and the Temple Mount, the entire world's going to try to divide Jerusalem. And it's going to lead to a situation where a leader will arise in Europe and make a 7-year treaty with Israel and institute a global monetary system where they're going to be doing away with paper currency and going to barcodes and chips.
Okay, and when is that supposed to happen?
Well, keep in mind, it should happen according to the predictions during the generation that would see the rebirth of Israel.
Okay.
Right, which, as far as they were concerned back then, as I understand it, was current events, pretty much.
Well, yes. Well, basically the scenario is
I mean, when we're talking about a 2,000-year window where, you know, at any point in the future something might happen, this is not specific prediction.
And in fact, Hal Lindsey, when he wrote this book, his view was that this was going to happen in the 70s.
No, if you read the book, it does not say that at all.
No, but it's clear from the way he wrote it that he intended this to happen in the 70s.
Oh, well, not in the 70s, but basically it doesn't set dates at all. But what's interesting...
That's the problem.
I'm sorry.
Oh, wait, and you don't see a problem with that? You're going to call this a prophecy, but there's no dates, there's nothing firm, it's just these vague, pretty soon now.
Right.
I mean, you see what happens when people actually pin specific dates to their predictions. Then they risk being hilariously wrong. Like that guy a couple of years ago who said that the world was going to end on March 21st, and then he became a laughingstock. It's very convenient for a guy like Hal Lindsey to just say something like real soon now, because here it is 40 years later, and if it still hasn't happened, we can still say, well, real soon now could be 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, guys, let me just give you one other quick concept.
You're saying exactly as if you're agreeing with my point here.
Well, listen, 100%. If you set dates and it doesn't happen, you're a false prophet. But let me just give you something real quick.
But if you don't set any dates,
I'm sorry.
But if you don't set any dates, there's no risk, and so I wouldn't call that a prediction.
Absolutely. But I'm going to give you a sequence of events that will be very prominent. Okay.
Okay.
The next thing on the prophetic list is a conflict between Russia allied with Iran against Israel. Russia and Iran are going to make out very badly. After that, there's going to be a global economic collapse. Europe is going to unite into a 10-nation federation. A leader will arise, make a 7-year treaty with Israel. He's going to allow the Jewish people to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem that hasn't been there for 2,000 years. He's going to allow them to rebuild the temple and start animal sacrifices and institute a global monetary system where there'll be no paper currency and barcodes and chips. Now, it's interesting. You guys are going to be very familiar with this, okay? There's going to be 2 men sent to the city of Jerusalem, and the entire world is going to hear what they have to say. And what's interesting, they're only going to be around for 3.5 years. And when they do get killed in the streets of Jerusalem, it's Revelation chapter 11, there's going to be a surge in retail sales. See what happened in Boston? How everybody celebrated when these guys...
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, that's convenient. So it just happened like a couple days ago, you're saying?
Well, no, I'm giving you a comparison.
No.
See what happened in
Has
Boston,
this thing happened yet?
I'm sorry?
This specific prediction that you're claiming was accurate?
This sequence of events, is this in the future still, or has it...
Oh, no, absolutely in the future.
Okay.
So wait a minute. So this 10-member European community
Federation, exactly. 10-member European Federation.
No, wait a minute.
Is going to arise and make a 7-year treaty with Israel.
You realize that when this was written, this European community had 6 members, right?
Correct.
And you realize that it has 27 now?
There's 17 right now.
No, well... I think there's more than that.
No, well, there's actually
European
27,
Union?
but there's 17 in the currency union.
Okay. Oh, so we're way past the 10-member
Oh,
part then.
100%.
Yeah,
And
so
notice-
he was
so
taking a
he's
thing-
totally wrong.
So he was taking a thing that already existed and predicting it would get bigger.
Well, let's
That's
put it this way. The
impressive.
foundation document
Wow.
of the European Union was signed in 1956. But I'm just telling you what's going to happen, according to the predictions. There'll be a final 10-nation federation.
Right.
What's gonna happen to the
other-
It'll
you've
be
got
very
it.
obvious when it
Yeah,
happens.
go ahead.
What's going to happen to the other guys?
Well, let's put it this way. It's hard to exactly say. You're talking about the other countries?
Yeah. Are they just
Okay.
going to, stop existing?
They might cease to exist nationally, let's put it that way.
They might.
Okay.
You know,
That's
you've
how
called,
bad their economy is going to get.
now that you've called twice, is there any chance that you could maybe call back after this stuff has happened instead of just calling and repeating the prediction already?
Now, I filled this for you guys in. Matter of fact, I sent Matt a copy. You can go to our website.
Okay.
My brother and I, we send out free newspapers. We wrote a newspaper in 1980, exactly 33 years ago.
Right. Dude,
And we
give
can send
me,
you guys copies.
prove your prophetic powers now using the Bible and Hal Lindsey. Give me a specific date in a specific year when something specific will happen and then call back. Is anything going to happen in the next 5 years?
Well, absolutely. And you know something? I'd
What?
like to send you a
What?
copy of
What?
the
Tell us-
newspaper.
tell
with
us-
details.
What?
Well, tell us
Just
specific-
tell us the thing
one
we're
thing.
watching out for and when.
One thing
Okay, no
specifically.
problem. Well, I have. It's a little bit detailed, but I can send you a copy of. It's called The
Just
Last Trumpet.
Give me the
It
date
was written
first.
April
What's
1980.
the date? What's the date
sorry.
when this thing you're predicting will happen?
We specifically don't set dates.
All right, get
All right,
lost.
you're done. Yeah.
That is not prophecy.
Retrofitting is not prophecy.
Yeah.